In a rainy, dark night, a boy named Sable, sitting alone in a dark alley while rain pours around him. As he reflects on his situation, he realizes that he has no memory of his past life. Not long after, a mysterious girl appears before him and offers to bring him to a place where he truly belongs. 3 years pass, and the setting shifts to the Royal Magic Academy in the Kingdom of Wenius. At the Academy, a notice is posted by the director requesting Sable's presence. As students gather around to read it, they begin whispering that Sable, known for having the lowest grades, is most likely about to be expelled. Later on, while walking through the Academy halls, Sable suddenly hears a scream. This leads to the introduction of a girl named Rose Chris. She displays a rebellious personality, insisting on entering the director's office. When no one lets her in, her frustration quickly turns into anger. Sable soon arrives at the scene and politely asks if he can go inside with her, but she refuses. Irritated by his presence, she threatens him by summoning an axe from the staff she carries. At that moment, a beast man named Holden steps in and orders her to stop causing trouble for Sable. Without hesitation, he engages her in a fight. However, due to the difference in strength, Holden easily overpowers her and takes her staff away. Right after the commotion, the director opens the door and is revealed to be Albus. She appears surprised upon seeing Rose at the Academy. Soon after, they are all called inside, where Albus explains that she summoned Sable for a specific reason. He will undergo special training. According to her, staying in the Academy will no longer help Sable grow, as he has already learned everything it can offer. Because of this, she believes it is better for him to train elsewhere. She also shares some history explaining that 5 years ago there was a war between the church and witches. Furthermore, she reveals that long ago in the Kingdom of Wenius, a powerful sorcerer spread magic across the land, triggering conflict in order to stop the witch hunts and build a world where witches could exist freely. At this moment, Albus tells him that she was the one who defeated that sorcerer, and adds that despite everything that sorcerer did, he helped many people see life and magic in a very different way. Moreover, one of the reasons why she founded the magic school 4 years ago was because of that sorcerer. Finally, they add that in the southern area of the kingdom, witches and mages are still considered quite strange. Because of that, she has decided to create a village of witches in the south of the kingdom, so that they will not be treated like oddities and can feel like normal people. Therefore, Albus tells him that she would like him to go and use his abilities as a mage. After 3 years, the inspector who will be in charge of Sable tells him that he was not able to develop any aptitude. All of his memories and magic related to the school will be completely sealed. Rose, upon hearing these words, stands up and realizes that Albus is doing everything for her own interests. So she tells her that she has lived for 300 years and is a witch of dawn. And because of the journey that Sable will have, she accepts the task. Albus tells her that she already has a witch who will guide Sable, but she immediately gets angry upon learning that Rose sent her home, and said that she would take care of everything. Likewise, Rose tells Sable that the first magic manual in the world was called the Grimoire of Zero, but Valbud tells her that she should not read it since it is a completely forbidden magic book that could end up destroying the entire world. Albus mentions that although she cannot allow them to read the book, she could introduce them to the witch who wrote it, which clearly makes Rose very excited when she hears this. A while later, Rose and Sable are talking, when suddenly a girl arrives whom we come to know as Holt. She tells them that, just like them, she will go to the new training village. We also meet a beast man named Kudo, who belongs to the magic school. A bit proudly, he mentions that he is an experienced traveler, so he does not need anyone to guide him on his journey. Kudo asks how someone like Sable, who has the worst grades in the school, will be in the same special training field as them. Sable does not say much, so before Kudo leaves, he tells him that they should have him expelled from the school, and then he immediately leaves the place. Later, the group prepares to depart when suddenly Holt notices a completely mysterious boy. Rose and Sable do not notice this, but they soon sit down to have lunch. Holt watches as Rose feeds her staff, and very scared, asks what kind of creature that staff is. The girl calmly responds that it is a magical staff from Ludens, and is known and feared as the witch-eating staff. Holt, very frightened, explains that this staff absorbs a person's magical power and kills them immediately, and Sable recalls that same day when he met Rose and tried to touch the staff, so he was literally about to die. Even so, Rose explains that it does not harm her because she and the Ludens made a pact, so even if she were to run out of magic, she would still have the staff's magic. A while later, the group sets off on the road, and we see that Sable is having a very hard time because he had not traveled this way for a long time, so he felt very nauseous. A few hours later, they stop to camp, and we see Holt cast a spell called Solm, which allows her to create a sphere of light. Sable, very amazed, understands why the girl is one of the best in the school, since she did not even have to chant the spell to summon it. Sable begins to mention all the positive points about the girl, while we notice that he is a little depressed, since as mentioned before, he is the student with the worst grades in the entire school. The girl, very positive, tells him that he should always smile at life and says that every person has a reason to feel happy in their days. She then asks him if he has any reason to be happy. Sable responds that before entering the academy, he does not remember absolutely anything. He does not even remember the moment when he took the entrance exam to be there, so he is practically forced to learn magic in that special training, or his memory will be erased and he will be expelled again. Finally, he confesses to the girl, a bit sadly, that he does not want that to happen because he would lose his memories again and be completely empty. After that, Rose tells him that he should not be so pessimistic, so she asks him why he thinks that way, and Sable replies that he cannot use much magic. He then sits down to talk, and Sable tells her that every time he tries to contain his magic, it goes out of control. Because of this, Rose tells him that he should listen to Kudo's words, which were that he should stop being a mage, since if he can activate his magic without being able to control it, he could become extremely dangerous. Sable tells her that during the past 3 years he managed to learn several spells, but despite these words, Rose mentions that starting a life from zero is not a bad idea. In a scene change, we see that the mysterious man is talking to another person. He mentions that he has tracked Sable's group, and the other man says that they should eliminate the Beastmen, which excites him a lot. He says that the war between the witches and the church must continue. The next morning, Sable's group arrives at an inn, and we see that they are having breakfast. At that moment, Rose thinks that Holt is very gluttonous and explains that it is because of the use of magic. She mentions that when witch hunters see a thin girl eating a lot, they will keep an eye on her because they will know she might be one. Right after that, they are interrupted by 2 men, who tell Sable and the girls that the previous night they were attacked by bandits. Holt, very worried, asks if their things were stolen, but the man responds that Kudo managed to take the belongings in time and escape. Rose thinks that it is very suspicious that they came out completely unharmed, since in the world of magic, young people like them are captured to be sold to others. So she concludes that if they are safe at that moment, it is because the bandits actually chose Kudo as their target. The boys mention that Kudo treated them badly and called them useless for not being able to use magic. Because of this, Rose understands and concludes that they were witch hunters. The reason he called them useless without magic was to draw attention so that they could escape. Sable tells them that once Kudo mentioned that he swore to protect the students of the academy, and we are shown a memory where he explains that a long time ago he was bullied by some classmates because of his low grades, but Kudo did not hesitate to help him. So we can say that he is truly a good person. After that, Rose stands up and says that it is her fault for letting him go alone, so she says that she will go rescue him. The others try to insist on going with her, but she completely refuses, since they would only be a burden to her. In a scene change, we see Holt and Sable observing some pieces of tail stuck on a tree. They become very worried because they think it could be Kudo's tail. Right after that, Sable notices footprints of 3 different types, so Holt becomes very nervous and hopes that Kudo was able to escape. The girl, very nervous, says that they could have been professionals, and mentions that there are people sentenced to death whom the church recruits to hunt witches, known as the Arbiters of De Ignis. She also adds that they are very unhinged people, and do not care if there are many innocent casualties as long as they can eliminate the witches. In a parallel scene, we see that Kudo is on top of a tree, and below him are the same men from the previous night. However, the branch breaks, leaving him completely trapped in a trap. Back with the others, Holt tells Sable that she recognizes one of the men, and we are shown a short memory where we see the same man who is chasing Kudo. He had burned Holt's friend alive, and without any remorse, told her that if she did not prove she was not a witch, she would end up like her friend, which clearly made the girl run away from the place. At that moment, the group is interrupted when they hear a scream of pain in the distance. Holt, very nervous, tells Sable that they should go, but Sable thinks that if Rose sees them, she will get angry. However, he decides to ignore what Rose had said and tells Holt that they must go save him. Meanwhile, we see that Kudo continues escaping, but he falls into another trap, and it seems that the man in front of him already has him at that moment. The man introduces himself as Tyran and tells him that he will finish him. Kudo casts a spell to blind him and immediately starts running, but Tyran is much faster. After catching up to him, he hits him in the stomach with his hammer, causing Kudo to crash against a tree, badly injured. At that moment, Tyran observes one of the wounds that Kudo had, which healed completely in a short time, so Tyran thinks that he will be a good subject for experiments. Immediately, Kudo remembers when he was a child, when he was kept in a cage and used as an experiment in a kind of circus, where they literally performed shows by tearing off his arms. Because of his lizard beast genetics, he could regenerate all his body parts, so he has suffered a lot throughout his life. Kudo then begins to regret, since he had spoken with Albus and refused to accept Rose as a guide to help them improve everything. So if he had accepted her help, they would not be in this situation. While Kudo is being dragged by the man, he tries to hold on to some roots, but Tyran immediately crushes his hands with his hammer. After seeing that he also tries to hold on with his mouth, Tyran prepares to strike him again, but at that precise moment Rose appears. We can immediately notice that Tyran's attitude completely changes as he now looks very terrified upon seeing her. Rose attacks him, and after several blows, Tyran is completely cornered. The girl tells him that if they leave at that moment, she will spare his life. However, Sable and Holt suddenly appear, and Tyran takes advantage of the distraction to take Sable as a hostage. In addition, Holt realizes that he is the same man who killed her friend. Right after that, the man begins to strangle Sable, and tells Rose to drop her staff if she wants him to release him. After thinking for a moment, she has no choice but to agree, and when she does, the man throws an enchanted cloth over the staff and orders Sable to wrap it around it. While Sable does what the man asks, Tyran tells Rose to confess that she comes from the church and that she was sent to the academy as a teacher to act as a spy for the anti-witch faction. For some strange reason, Holt begins to cry, and we are shown a memory from when she was just a child. The girl explains that because of the horns that grew on her, she was called a child of, but her mother always supported her, and that no matter what happened, she had to keep smiling at life. At that moment, we also discover that members of the church cut off those horns, and she was sent to the magic school without being discovered. In addition, on the day Albus mentioned it, it becomes clear that a squad from the church's army had asked her to work with them, and for a long time she felt guilty about whether to tell the truth or not. But on the day she saw the mysterious man, she knew that the church had sent its hunters. We are also shown a scene where she had poisoned her own food to delay the journey, but Sable ended up eating all of her skewers, and that was the reason why he felt very sick while traveling on the road. In the end, she thought that nothing bad would happen, because even though she was a spy, she did not wish harm on anyone, so she begins to call herself a traitor, since everyone had been very kind to her. Because of this, her intentions changed, and she no longer wanted to do evil like she did at the beginning. Sable notices that the girl feels guilty and gives her some encouraging words. Since she can no longer bear being a traitor, she takes a piece of Kudo's tail and, after casting a spell, attacks Tyran. However, because he has a cloak that blocks any magical attack, he easily blocks it. He then begins to call her a traitor and tells her that if she is not useful to them, then he will finish her. Sable starts looking at the staff that was left out in the open and hears a voice coming from it telling him to use it. Sable shows a completely different expression and decides to take it. And if you remember well, no one other than Rose could touch it, because they would die instantly if they did. Right after that, a great dark mass begins to appear around them, completely surrounding them. A while later, Sable wakes up, and Holt begins to cry with happiness because he did not die after touching the staff. Afterwards, Rose starts scolding him harshly and tells him that he should not have done that, or someone could have literally died. Likewise, she scolds Kudo since all of this happened because he refused to accept and let her be his guide. The girl is even so angry that she scolds the staff itself and tells it that it should not seduce Sable since he clearly has her. On the way to the inn, Sable asks why he did not die when touching Luden. She replies that it is because he possesses even more power, which his staff can clearly absorb. The others are surprised to hear that Sable has more magic than the staff, but they are even more shocked when she says that Sable's magic is practically infinite, and that now the staff is completely satisfied. She also does not know how long she will live, since it has been 300 years since she has been with it. Because of the energy and magic it absorbs, it keeps Rose young. just like the staff. Finally, they tell Kudo that he will now have to go with her. Later that night, Sable looks at the stars because he cannot sleep. At that moment, Holt appears with some hot drinks, and they begin to talk about what happened. Holt says that her intentions were never to guide him toward Tyran, and Sable knows that this is true, so he tells her that she has nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the girl takes off her hat and after taking Sable's hand, tells him to touch what remains of her horns. After doing so, she explains that this is the reason why she is called the daughter of, so she was lied to her whole life, being told that she had to serve the church to cleanse her soul. At the same time, she begins to recite something she learned in the church and explains that if a beast warrior and a witch die, the animal's soul, not knowing where to go, will stay with the witch's lineage, and their descendants can give birth to half-beast beings. This reveals that she was, in part, a half-beast girl. After telling him that she truly appreciates him for defending Kudo, she gives him a small kiss on the cheek, and Sable leaves the place. Immediately after, Rose appears behind him and starts teasing him, saying that it was his moment to shine. But since Sable does not have many emotions, he does not understand anything about love. The next morning, we see that the men who had accompanied Kudo and asked the group for help were actually spies from the church, so they ended up being arrested. A little later, the group sits down to talk, and Rose tells Kudo that it is time to use magic to heal his arms. She also explains that there are different types of magic, including healing magic. Kudo refuses since it would consume too much magic and would cause him to pass out completely. However, Rose mentions that they have Sable, who could be used to cast those spells. We then discover that Kudo is actually the one who knows the most about healing spells, but because Sable has too much power, Rose will act as an intermediary to heal Kudo, since if Sable did it incorrectly, he could end up killing him. They then hold hands, and magic begins to flow through the three of them. Kudo recites the spell, and immediately his arms and tail regenerate instantly, so everyone in the inn is completely amazed. The girl tells them to take advantage of the moment to be admired, since half of the people love mages, while the other half hate them. So since they have already experienced the part where they are hated, they should enjoy the good moment. A few hours later, they arrive at another city, but just as they arrive, a carriage passes by Sable and splashes him completely. So Rose mentions that it is time to bathe. She had clearly reserved large baths so they could clean themselves. A while later, Kudo and Sable enter the bath and begin talking about becoming mages. Kudo mentions that the witch squad was previously known as the Knights of the Church. They were a group of knights who gave up all their possessions to protect the church and the people. He also mentions that the church has always hated beasts like him. So when they changed their name to the Witch Squad, another squad of beasts was also formed, which consists of the most elite beast warriors. Since Kudo is not as powerful as them, the only way for him to join is by becoming a mage. That is the main reason why he is heading to that special training. Sable asks him why he wants to join that squad, and Kudo asks if he has heard about the Dragon King of Destruction. He then explains that 6 years ago, it was being exhibited when the Northern Disaster occurred, in which a witch went mad and completely destroyed an entire city because her intention was to end the world. He also mentions that she wiped out the North in just one night. At that time, beasts were seen as a symbol of evil, so everyone hated him. But one day, a man appeared alongside the dragon, looked at him with a smile, and rescued him. From that moment on, he promised himself that he would become a great person like him. After saying this, Kudo asks Sable again to tell him why he wants to become a mage, but suddenly, Rose appears completely naked in front of them. Both boys become very nervous, and Rose calmly tells them that she will not ruin their bath, as she is an exhibitionist. They have no choice but to leave, but when they go outside, they run into Holt, who is also completely naked. The girl is completely shocked, and Kudo, not knowing what to do, pulls off the towel Sable was wearing, leaving him completely exposed in front of her. The girl becomes embarrassed after seeing him. After that, they continue their journey through different places, where they experience many adventures and also learn many things about survival in the places that Rose leads them to. After a few days, the group is walking, and we see that the others have grown very fond of Rose, as they practically treat her like their mother. Kudo suddenly asks her what she will do after she completes her mission and is no longer their guide, and she responds that she will visit the Witch of the Muddy Darkness. Kudo is shocked to hear this, since that is the witch who created magic and wrote the Forbidden Book, the Grimoire of Zero. Rose also mentions that when she visits her, she will simply talk with her, since she has lived for 300 years and everything feels very boring to her. She also adds that as long as she has her staff, Luden, her life will never end, so everything related to love and ordinary human matters seems completely boring to her. The only thing left for her is to find ways to entertain herself. Situations like the destruction of the North and others are related to the danger that excites her, so everyone except Sable thinks that she is a bit crazy. Sable tells her that he thinks she is a good girl, and this makes Rose blush a lot. Finally, she tells him that spending time with them has also been very fun for her. At that moment, a boy appears running and tells them to run as well. The group follows him, and after hiding inside the roots of a tree, the boy casts a small protective shield that makes them invisible. Soon after, a beast man named Ye appears with a sword on his back and asks the boy to come out. However, he detects the presence of the group and, with a single strike, cuts the tree in two, causing the boy to fall along with the others. They are in danger because they are very close to him, so they would not have time to cast a spell before being defeated. At that moment, Rose appears behind him and attacks him with her staff. He has very fast reflexes and manages to block her attack. This gives time for the others, and Rose tells them to leave immediately. However, the man puts away his weapon and says that he is a mercenary who knows which fights he cannot win. In other words, he is accepting his defeat and plans to leave. But Rose says that she has no intention of letting him leave alive, since she has no reason to do so. Right after that, Ye shows his tail, and the girl realizes that it is a signal to others nearby, and if she decides to attack, the others will come out to help him. Ye also tells them that they are special students heading to the village, and even looks at her staff and calls it by its name. These words surprise Rose, since the man knows many things. After saying this, he leaves the place. Shortly after, we see that the boy safely arrives home with Sable's group, and they are greeted by the church priest of the place whom we know as Chimpu. He appears a bit serious upon learning that they are mages. However, he then asks if they are students, and the group is surprised that he already knows. He tells them that everyone in the village knows, since when students arrive, everyone finds out. The boy also tells him that they were the ones who rescued him, and he explains that Yohei is a sentinel who helps the witch control the village. A while later, Chimpu explains that 2 years ago the village passed into the hands of another person, since the witch, who was Ye's superior, simply gave it up without fighting. Not to mention that she also disappeared. Moreover, since the new leader arrived, no one has been able to oppose them. The group becomes very nervous after hearing all of this, as they realize that their training will be very difficult. At that moment, Sable realizes the deception behind everything. Since if we think about it, 3 of them were spies, Kudo was somewhat aggressive, and Sable is the worst student in the academy. They finally come to the conclusion that they were sent there simply so that they would not be able to return, and if that is the case, they would be completely expelled. At that moment, Kudo thinks that if they defeat the current witch of the army, they could complete their training mission. However, Chimpu tells them that it is practically impossible, since she is a very powerful witch who could defeat 1,000 soldiers. Everyone becomes very nervous at that moment when Rose appears. She says that they should not trust his words because things are not always what they seem. She even uses herself as an example, saying that people think she is just an adorable girl, but those who truly know her understand that she is actually a very powerful witch. Because of that, she tells them that she does not trust him. She also tells the man that earlier, when Ye attacked them, he already knew that she was their guide, so she thinks that Tyran, who managed to escape, may have returned to the church and informed the priest about everything that happened. And it was the church priest who then informed the witch of the village. Finally, Rose tells him that if he is not their enemy, then he should show them the village so they can see how the people react. Afterwards, they head to the entrance of the village, and we see the boy reunite with his father. They then begin a tour around the village while the boy tells them stories about himself, as well as about the barrier he used when they were hiding. The boy explains that this technique was taught to him by the former witch who ruled the village. At the same time, while the group is talking, Rose notices that the villagers are hiding and thinks that everything is strangely quiet. Soon, they arrive at the village inn and are shocked to see several figures hanging. However, the man immediately explains that they are dolls representing each of the people who have lived there. The group asks what happened to the previous residents, but he simply replies that they ran away. The current witch placed those there to scare people so they would not escape. He finally adds that as long as they do not protest or cause trouble, they will be completely fine. They then enter the place, and the others leave. Once inside, Rose thinks things through and tells the group that they should defeat this witch. She also says that she should deal with Albus since she lied to both them and her. She becomes angry and says that they do not know who they are dealing with. Holt suggests that if they talk to the army, they might be able to understand the situation. However, after analyzing everything, Sable realizes that if they do that, the village will turn into a battlefield, and all of this would just be to graduate as mages, so he finally says that they should resolve the situation themselves. Kudo gets angry at these words and grabs Sable by the shirt, telling him that it is a very bad idea, since Ye, who attacked them, is likely working for the witch, and he is not confident about starting a fight. However, Sable asks him if he wants to lose his ceremony, because if they return to the kingdom, that is what will happen. Sable adds that the day he touched Luden, he realized that he is not afraid of dying. However, Holt responds that she is clearly afraid of dying, and Sable replies that because of that, she and Kudo should leave the village. The girl starts crying and tells him that she does not want him to die. But Sable, being someone who does not understand hints, asks her why she said that. So the girl has no choice but to run away while crying. Rose then explains to Sable that she considers him someone very dear to her. After this conversation, Sable runs after her to apologize. Shortly after, we see Holt praying when she is suddenly interrupted by a little girl, who introduces herself as Lily. She noticed that Holt was crying and tells her that mages can also be believers. Lily says that in this world it is not normal for mages to have beliefs, and at that moment Chimpu appears. In a parallel scene, we see Kudo and Rose talking about their chances of survival. The girl tells him that these tense moments are very fun for her, and since she is their teacher, she will not let anyone harm them. So if she had to give her life to save them, she would do it without thinking twice. Back with Holt, we see Lily running out of the church, leaving her alone with Chimpu. Holt then says that she now understands that she should talk to Sable about her feelings, since he did not understand why she started crying. She prepares to leave, but she is stopped by the man. He takes out a kind of weapon with an insignia, and Holt realizes that it belongs to the church and her former allies. Chimpu tells her that she should never have separated from the others, and that he knows she betrayed the church. He then uses some ropes that completely immobilize her, and after transforming his weapon into a scythe, places it on her neck and tells her that if she maintains her role as a spy for the church, he will spare her life. Back with Sable, he returns to the group and says that he cannot find Holt. Rose tells him that they simply need to follow the trace of her magic. While walking through the forest, she explains that she can track the magic of anyone she has met, and after a long walk, they arrive at a cave. After entering, they notice some blood on the ground and soon realize that it is a trap. Rose mentions that it seems the one inside is the village witch, and she becomes excited knowing that the witch wants an audience with them. Right after that, Rose uses Luden and sends it inside the cave to figure out what lies ahead. All of this makes Kudo very scared, and he says that he does not dare to fight, so he considers leaving them and going away. However, he did not expect that right outside was Ye himself, who tells him that if he has cut ties with them, he can go with him and learn how to use magic. Back with Sable, he tries to use a light spell, but ends up causing a small explosion due to his power, so Rose helps him. Back with Kudo, he is very terrified by Ye's presence. He says that he only wanted to become a member of the witch army, so it would not make sense to learn magic if he ends up being expelled from the academy. However, Ye tells him that if he makes a blood pact with the witch, he could join that army without any problem. Kudo then remembers the blood in the cave, and asks where Holt is. The man responds that he killed her and ate her, so Kudo refuses to join the witch and says that he can leave because he is going to deal with Sable and Rose. But because of the words Holt said, Kudo becomes extremely furious and tells him that they are not going anywhere. We can see that Ye gets very excited seeing Kudo like this, so he finally asks him to show what he is capable of. Back with Sable, Rose tells him that the witch might want to negotiate, since because Sable has infinite magic and is a mage apprentice, any witch would want him. At that moment, something triggers in Sable and he says that the girl managed to remember something from his past. Rose tells him that if he wants, he can go back, since Sable always risks his life no matter the consequences. She then asks him if he would go to look for Holt if she tried to stop him, and Sable responds that he would do it without hesitation. Because she is his friend, he also adds that if Rose were in danger, he would go as well. These words make the girl blush a little, and at the same time she becomes very excited, since she thinks that Sable says very beautiful things. At that moment, Rose senses a presence coming from a door inside the cave, and whips come out and drag Sable. She is also dragged, and after letting go of her staff, Chimpu hits her and sends her inside along with Sable. Right after that, the door closes and some kind of spell begins to form in the place, and we can see that there is a woman there. A memory is then revealed where she met Sable that night under the rain. We are then introduced to the girl named Zero. Sable tells Rose that he can remember her. After that, Zero extends her hand to Sable and tells him that she has been waiting for him. However, Rose tells Sable that he must be very careful with her, but with just a movement of her finger, Zero sends her flying. She also mentions that Rose is a liar, since she calls herself a witch, but cannot even cast a spell. She also adds that a long time ago, Albus took Sable away from her and separated them, and she confesses that she took control of that village only because of him. At that exact moment, Sable begins to remember many things. Later, Zero tells him that if he follows her, she will love him forever, protect him with all her being, and take him to a world worthy of him, since as we know, Sable basically has infinite magic. Sable responds by explaining the true meaning of a worthy life and begins to mention the qualities of each of his friends, basically telling her that he does not need her. Sable then thinks that if he uses all his power, he could defeat Zero and save Rose. But at that moment, Zero stands up and gives him a very passionate kiss. This gives Rose motivation, and using Sable's magic, she casts a spell of a mythical beast. However, with just one hand, Zero nullifies her magic, leaving both of them in shock. At that moment, Zero reveals that she is the creator of the Grimoire of Zero, and that all these abilities were clearly invented by her. So as we remember, the creator of this forbidden book was practically the creator of magic in this world. She finally introduces herself as the Witch of the Muddy Darkness, the one Rose wanted to meet. Zero begins to charge a powerful attack while Sable stands in front of Rose, but just before she releases the spell, everything returns to normal. We also see that her threatening attitude changes, and she tells them that from now on she will be the supervisor of the special students. These words make Rose extremely excited, since she is a big fan of the witch. Rose then grabs Sable's cheeks and congratulates him, as it seems that he passed the test. Right after that, Holt appears and also congratulates Sable. After jumping on him, she confesses that if she had accepted being their follower, she would have failed the test. Holt explains that everyone in the village was supervising the test. When Chimpu took her hostage in the church, he told her to continue working for the church faction. But when she refused to keep being a spy and spat in his face, she passed the test. In addition, throughout all this time, Rose already knew that everything was a test, since she suspected many things she had seen. At that moment, Ye appears along with Kudo and says that Kudo also passed the test. In a scene change, we return to the school, and Albus shouts after reading the letter sent by the witch. At that moment, Holden arrives running, and she tells him that the 3 students have passed all the tests. Both of them are surprised, since the previous year other students were not able to pass anything. She is also excited because, in one way or another, the group managed to pass all the tests. However, she becomes angry after finding out that an arbiter, referring to Tyran, attacked them, so she immediately writes a warrant for his capture, and says that he will pay dearly. Back with Sable, they are celebrating a welcome party, where the villagers are also present celebrating with them. The group mentions that everyone had been hiding so that Sable's group would not suspect their plan. But since Rose is very clever, she tells them that she already knew about their plan. A while later, Zero continues talking with them and explains that their intention was to get them expelled, since they have a lot of talent and people like them could end up destroying the world. She then explains to Holt that in 10 years, she could have the power to destroy an army of 1,000 men in just a few seconds. The girl is very surprised, and Zero turns to Kudo and tells him that he is clearly very intelligent, and if he continues developing his talent along with the Book of Protection, he could become known as an immortal mage. Finally, she turns to Sable and tells him that because of his infinite magic, he could become the longest living mage of all time, since he could live forever. This means he could continue perfecting his abilities and spells and practically become an unstoppable being. However, there is also the possibility that this will not happen if they all become lazy, because in that case, they would all end up being useless. On the other hand, She tells them that it is time to start talking about the special training. She explains that each of them will be in charge of a shop, so they will have 3 days to decide what kind of shop they want to open. As they begin to eat, Sable asks Zero if she was the one who brought him to the academy years ago. But she responds that if he does not remember, then it is not necessary for him to do so, and if he truly feels that it is not necessary, he will remember it on his own. A few hours later, the group walks back to their inn, when suddenly Kudo becomes excited as he sees a huge dragon in the sky. The dragon then lands in the middle of the village, and Kudo is shocked to realize that it is the Dragon King of Destruction. The Dragon King then asks for the group and hands them a letter from the Magic Academy. After reading it, they realize that they have been assigned as special students to the witch's village, and that all their magical limits have been removed. The Dragon King is surprised to hear that they can now use their full magical potential without even graduating. Kudo interrupts him and asks if he remembers him, to which the Dragon King replies that he could never forget the atrocities that were done to him. Taking the chance, Kudo asks if, once he becomes a mage, he would be allowed to join the witch army, since that has always been his dream. The Dragon King tells him that the decision is not in his hands, but if he ever becomes his companion, he will fully trust him. Hearing this, Kudo becomes very excited. A while later, Zero and Rose are alone talking, and Rose tells her that she knows she is running out of power, so someone like Sable, who has infinite magic, could be her salvation. At that moment, Zero explains that although Sable was born with this ability, many years ago a witch tried to steal his powers. We are then shown a memory where that same witch killed Sable's mother in front of his eyes, and when she tried to steal his magic, the overwhelming power caused her to disintegrate. As a result of this, Sable ended up blocking his own memories. She also mentions that Sable ended up as a slave and was chased in the worst ways. That is why he chose to punish himself and look down on himself. Finally, she says that Sable's emotional wounds are very deep because he has suffered a lot over the years, and she confesses that she was the one responsible for sealing all his memories so that he could start a new life. However, when he arrived at the academy, they realized that he could become a danger to everyone, since if he were to lose control, he could cause a disaster. That is why they wanted to expel him from the academy. After hearing this, Rose gets angry at Zero because she does not want her to keep controlling Sable's life. But at that moment, Zero reveals that Sable is the son of her older brother, meaning that she is actually his aunt. Rose is shocked by this revelation, as it means that Sable is the son of a man named 13, who wanted to live in a world of witches. He was the one responsible for stealing the grimoire of Zero, spreading magic, and causing the war in the kingdom of Winias, and he is known as the Wicked Sorcerer. In a scene change, we see that a few months have passed since they arrived at the village. Sable narrates that Holt is in charge of many tasks in the village. On the other hand, Kudo decided to become an assistant at a clinic because of his healing magic. And finally, Sable decided to open a magic storage in a house, where he provides his magic to those who need it. We then see how Holt and Kudo receive a daily supply of magic from Sable. A little later, we see Rose talking about Sable and telling him that he should go out more, since he has been settling for staying inside the house. However, Sable says that besides giving magic to others, he also washes everyone's clothes, including Holt's. Rose becomes very nervous, since he is literally a teenager who has been washing the clothes of a girl his same age. When she hears that he also washes her underwear, she falls to the ground. Rose immediately tells him that he should be careful about saying things like that, because if the other girls in the village hear him, they will start calling him a pervert. She then begins to lecture him, explaining that there are certain things he should not do, since underwear is very important to each person, and having someone else wash it exposes their privacy completely. She finally tells him that he should act differently with Holt, since Holt likes him, but Sable does not understand much about emotions. In response, Rose tells him that in that case, he should try telling her when they are alone at night that she looks very beautiful, and he will get a reaction he does not expect, not to mention that he will become more like an adult. Sable, being a bit clueless, asks if that means he will become old, and Rose becomes desperate, since he is completely bad at understanding hints. However, he says that he should do this as part of his self-growth, otherwise he will fall into a crisis. Remembering Zero's words, Rose suddenly hugs Sable and tells him that he is a very good person. Shortly after, they sit down to talk, and she tells him that if he just stays at home, he will not be able to train his magic. She then mentions that they are running low on tea leaves and orders him to go to the forest to gather more. Sable says that he should stay in case someone needs help, but Rose tells him that she will cover for him, so he has no choice but to agree. Sable then heads to the forest and runs into the village boy, who tells him that he knows where those plants are and begins to guide him. However, they end up getting lost, and at that moment, a mouse appears. The boy mentions that Lily is friends with these mice, so they should follow them. After doing so, they arrive at the church where the boy's mother is, and she angrily takes him away. Chimpu also appears and invites Sable inside. Later, while they are talking, Lily appears, looking mysterious as always with her hood. Chimpu orders her to remove it, but since she refuses, he takes it off himself, revealing her face, and Sable is shocked to see that she is actually like a little mouse girl. Chimpu also mentions that Lily is a great cook, so she could be considered an excellent chef. Shortly after, we see an amazing buffet prepared by Lily, and Sable is very impressed. Likewise, Chimpu scolds Sable for going into the forest without knowing it, since there are many creatures inside that could literally end his life. So he advises him to be careful and stay alert when he is in a place he does not know. After that, he asks him why he was there, and Sable shows him the tea leaves. Chimpu scolds him again since Sable did not even investigate where they grow. He then tells him that those grow near the shop that Zero manages, so next time he should ask an adult before doing something like that. After hearing this, Sable heads back to the village. While walking to his assigned place, Sable remembers Chimpu's words, where he said that he should stay there all day, because even if he passes his exam, if he does not go outside, he will not learn anything beyond giving magic to others. When he arrives at the village, he runs into Holt. Sable notices that she has blood on her arm, but she tells him that it is Ye's blood. She explains that while they were in the forest, a pack of wolves attacked them, and since she could not cast a spell in time, Ye ended up killing the wolves. However, at that exact moment, her spell was completed. Just then, Lily arrives and begins to encourage her, since she feels very guilty and starts crying, so Lily has no choice but to take her away. Soon after, Rose appears and tells Sable that it is time to work. They then run to where Zero is, who is treating Ye. Zero tells Sable that she will take a bit of his magic, and through a kiss, she draws his power. She then casts a spell, which immediately heals Ye's wound. Sable, a bit worried, asks if they will expel Holt, but Zero says no, and Ye supports this, saying that he only scolded her so she could learn for next time. He then says he will apologize to the boy and leaves the place. The others stay talking, and Rose thinks that Sable has not progressed much compared to the others, and mentions that he just wants to stay at home giving magic to everyone. Despite hearing this, Ye and Zero tell him that he can stay that way if he wants, which makes Rose very upset. A few hours later, Zero and Rose are alone talking, and Rose asks about the power that Sable gave her. Zero feels a bit guilty because she had promised not to take Sable's magic, but at the same time, Rose realizes that she did not take much. She thinks that if Zero continues using magic like that, she will age much faster and eventually die. Zero replies that it is a process that everyone must go through and says that as long as she is by the side of the man she loves, she will be very happy even if she dies, clearly referring to Sable. In a scene change, we see Holden traveling in a carriage when suddenly a memory is revealed. In it, we see Albus when she was very young and wanted to help when 13 was causing the war. The girl was also very furious, since it seems that 13 had killed her grandmother. However, Holden did not let her go, because she knew she would die. Back in the present, we see that a man is riding in the carriage with Holden, and it is none other than Tyran. That night, we see that Kudo wakes up at midnight, very exhausted, and says that the last thing he remembers is that he was healing several people. When he goes down to meet the others, they tell him that he passed out because he ran out of magic. Right after that, Rose enters and tells him that he is making too much noise. She also asks them what they learned from the mistakes they made, and after hearing each of them, she approves their answer. She then tells them that they should take the next day off. The next morning, the group heads to Zero's shop. Upon arriving, Sable thinks that Zero has too many books, since she practically owns a library. Zero tells him that even though she has many books, she carefully selects which ones to take to the Forbidden Library. Sable is a bit confused and listens to Kudo's explanation, who tells him about the Fortress of Fear, located in the north. At the same time, he explains that this place does not appear on maps. Moreover, it is where books forbidden by all the churches are kept, so it is an extremely secret place. Holt becomes very excited and tells the group that they should go there someday, but Kudo says he would never go there because it is filled with the remains of a calamity. At that moment, no details are given about those remains or what they are like, but Zero mentions that if they encounter them, a very painful death awaits them. Holt says that they could go since they are a very strong group, but Kudo mocks her, saying that they have a mage who hits her own allies and someone who passes out while healing others, so going there would be suicide. Right after that, Zero tells Holt that a very special training awaits her, which makes the girl panic. Later, Zero takes Holt away and we see Sable looking through Zero's books. After a while, Holt practices her magic with Zero, but Zero tells her that she still has a long way to go. She then gives her a demonstration and explains that magic must take different forms. Soon after, Holt collapses to the ground because her magic is exhausted. Sable tells her that he can give her his magic, but she refuses, and after insisting on refusing, she ends up fainting. Sable catches her in his arms, and they immediately take her home. Once there, she wakes up and starts talking with Sable. He asks her if she knows his mother, since he remembers talking to her many years ago, and in that memory, Zero told him that he had eyes of the same color as hers. However, she denies it, saying that the only one she knew was his father. She then asks him to bring the book he had taken, and after reading it, she says that it is a very impressive medical book. She explains that many witches use enchantments in the books they write so others cannot understand them. However, Zero says that this book does not seem to have any tricks. She also says that it was written by a sorcerer and reveals that it was actually written by 13 himself. Because of this, they ask Sable to find any clues that his father may have left behind. They are interrupted when Ye arrives. He thanks Sable for accompanying her, and Sable apologizes for not being able to give her his magic. However, at that moment, both of them tell him that they need to talk about something very serious with him. A few hours later, we see Sable searching for herbs and medicinal plants together with the village boy. However, at the beginning we see that Sable is very deep in thought. After spending some time like this, he walks with the boy while remembering the words that Zero and Ye told him. She asked him if he only wanted to provide magic for others or truly become a mage, since they made each of them open a shop so they could study magic and become mages, so she gave him time to think carefully about what he really wants to do. Back in the present, Sable and the boy arrive at a place full of flowers, but since he clearly needs to study magic, the boy becomes very sad. Suddenly, Sable senses a presence and a purple sphere appears in front of them. It attacks by launching spikes that hit them, and the creature then disappears. We then notice that the boy has been struck in the stomach. Sable becomes very desperate and realizes that his healing magic is not very effective, so he picks the boy up in his arms and starts running. Feeling extremely desperate, he realizes that the boy is dying and feels very guilty for not having learned even a simple healing spell. At that moment, a magical bird appears in front of them and tells Sable to keep running, since the others are already on their way. Soon after, Sable exits the forest, and the others arrive. Without hesitation, they cast a spell to save the boy's life. However, to perform it, they need Zero's magic and Rose's blood. When they arrive at the house, we discover that both of them have collapsed, one due to lack of magic and the other due to blood loss. We also see Sable crying as he still feels very guilty. But soon, they realize that the boy is no longer in the room, and later we see that he is bragging in the village about how they fought a monster. Back with the group, Rose thinks that the creature that attacked them might have been a remnant of the calamity, since she had read in a forbidden book that these creatures disguise themselves as animal remains to trap their prey. She also explains that after launching their spikes, they suck blood from their victims, and then return to hang on trees, waiting for their next target. She adds that they were creations made by demons to torture and kill humans, and that they were created during the Northern Tragedy. Since the demons are no longer around, these creatures have been multiplying more and more. Zero mentions that the witch army placed a barrier that prevents these creatures from entering, so they conclude that if that creature was there, someone must have brought it. They then say they will go talk to Chimpu, but as they leave the house, they run into Holden. In a scene change, we see Ye and Holden arriving at the church, and Holden says that there are people who sell remnants of the calamity. She believes that someone behind the church is trying to sabotage the peace between the church and the witch army. Ye then says that he will inform the neighboring village, while Chimpu will go with Lily to gather information in the forest. So, since Zero and Rose are weak, they leave everything in Holden's hands. However, at that moment, Zero enters and scolds Ye because he was about to leave the village without her. After talking, Ye has no choice but to accept that they will go with him. Soon after, Chimpu leaves with Lily and the horse, and we can see that Tyran is watching them. A few hours later, Holden arrives where the group is and tells them that he will be in charge of them. He also says that he is the head of security of the academy and starts boasting about how talented he is. The group begins to doubt his words, which makes him angry, and he ends up kicking them all out. Right after, Rose asks him the real reason why he is there, since it is not a coincidence that a calamity remnant appeared on the same day he arrived. However, he tells her that he only came to inspect the village. He then asks her for a favor, and in return he will allow her to read the Grimoire of Zero, since Albus truly loves that village and wants to protect it with everything. In another scene, Sable is talking with Holt and Kudu. He tells them that starting from this day he wants to become a great mage, which means he will stop doing things like washing clothes. These words make Holt blush a lot, and she tells him that he was never obligated to wash her clothes. Then, Sable asks both of them to teach him how to use magic, and in return he will replenish them with his magic, so both of them agree. After that, Holt shyly tells Sable that she has transferred magic to Rose and Zero several times through a kiss, hinting that she also wants him to transfer magic to her in that way. However, Sable straightforwardly refuses. This makes her panic, since she will not be able to receive his kiss. Kudo then jokingly asks what Sable would think if both of them were girls, and if he would give them magic through a kiss. Sable answers yes, which makes Holt go crazy, as she cannot imagine two girls kissing, and she says she would never allow that to happen. Soon after, Holden arrives and asks if he knows where he could stay. At the same time, the boy's father also arrives and tells Sable that he needs to talk to him. When they are alone, the man tells Sable that he should not get close to his son anymore, and begins to leave. At that moment, Sable realizes that every time he gets involved with them, something bad happens. So before the man leaves, he asks if he can play with the boy again once he is strong enough to defend himself. The man, after thinking for a moment, says that he will first teach his son how to understand the forest, and then leaves. At that exact moment, Tyran appears behind Sable and takes advantage of him being alone to kidnap him. Right after, Sable is taken along a road by Tyran, and while he is completely tied up with a bag covering his head, he begins to recall memories of his mother. She told him that he must never get close to witches who have the same eyes as him, or he would lose everything he has at that moment. Soon after, his mother leaves the place where he was hiding, and we see an explosion that leaves her badly injured. Then, a woman enters the place with an axe and loudly tells Sable to come out of his hiding spot. She begins to threaten him, saying that if he does not come out, she will kill his mother. The boy, not knowing what to do, comes out, but despite obeying, the woman still cuts off his mother's head. After that, the woman uses a spell to touch Sable's heart, feeling all his magic flowing. But since Sable was already very powerful even as a child, the witch ends up being consumed by his power. Back in the present, Sable screams in despair after remembering all of this. They stop to rest, and Sable is so confused that Tyran has to explain to him that he is being kidnapped. Soon, they hear horses approaching, and we see Kudo and Holt heading toward them. However, since Holt does not know how to handle the horses, they end up crashing. In a parallel scene, we see Rose collecting many calamity remnants, since that was the favor Holden asked from her in exchange for letting her read the Grimoire of Zero. Back with the group, Holt launches a powerful fire attack, which Tyran manages to block. However, the flames burn the ropes binding Sable, allowing him to break free. Tyran then tells them that they have improved a lot, and suddenly Sable appears behind him, threatening to finish him in a second. On the other hand, we see that Rose had saved a man who was lying in the forest after being stung by many bees. When she leaves the forest, she finds Holden sleeping on the ground. He tells her that the last thing he remembers is that the group was accompanying him to an inn, so Rose concludes that he was put to sleep using magic. Since Rose is very intelligent, she realizes that everything was planned by him, possibly as a test to see if the group could defend themselves. Holden admits that she is right and says that he used Tyran to test them, which leaves her completely shocked. Back with Sable, Tyran suddenly strikes him. Without hesitation, he hits Sable's arms, leaving him unable to move. He also immobilizes the others while saying that they should never hesitate to kill their enemy when they have the chance. He then moves towards Sable to finish him. We see threads begin to appear, and Tyran ends up cutting off Sable's arm. At that moment, Chimpu appears and, for the first time, removes the glasses he always wears. After that, he uses the threads again and cuts off Tyran's lower limbs, basically tearing him apart. Right then, Zero and Ye arrive, and Chimpu scolds them for being late. Soon after, Rose and Holden also arrive, and when Holden hears that he was the one who brought Tyran, everyone turns their attention to him. A little later, they return to the house, and Holden begins to explain that if he managed to make one of his students return alive, the execution order against Tyran would be cancelled. Rose concludes that it was not really a test, since they actually wanted to see the villagers' ability to defend themselves. Zero then responds that they must improve the village's protection, because it is extremely vulnerable. She also adds that they need to protect the neighboring villages as well, since they always end up in trouble because of them. Holden suggests that if the problem is the lack of combat skills, they could use Tyran, since they saved him, although he is now without his limbs. Tyran gets angry at Holden, saying that this was not part of the deal, but Holden becomes furious and tells him that if he refuses, he will be executed. The next day, Holt is furious after finding out that Tyran has been made their ally. She refuses to accept it at first, but after a long discussion, she has no choice but to agree. Even so, she personally tells him that she will keep an eye on him, and, if necessary, she will kill him. After a few days, we see Holden saying goodbye to Rose, as he has to return to the academy. He suggests that she should go with him, since he had promised to take her to the Forbidden Library so she could read the Grimoire of Zero. However, since the group has made great progress, she rejects his offer, saying she can visit him another time. After that, he leaves, and we see Rose heading back to the house. As she arrives outside, she overhears Sable and Holt talking inside. Sable tells Holt that he has been having memories of his past life, but they feel strange, as if nothing has really changed within him. He also tells her that Rose said she loves him, which makes Holt very nervous. Despite that, it seems Sable does not understand anything about love, and he even says that it seems he likes his teacher Rose. Holt quickly changes the topic and asks him for his daily supply of magic. But Sable immediately refuses, remembering the time when the boy killed his mother's murderer. After that, he stands up and leaves. In another scene, we see Rose by a lake, thinking about what Sable said since she had actually been listening to them. Soon, Holt arrives and tells her everything Sable said, which causes her to fall into the water out of shock. Back with Sable, he runs in a panic to Zero, and the two sit down to talk. Meanwhile, Holt asks Rose if she plans to leave now that she knows she likes a student. Rose tries to deny it, but eventually admits it, and Holt hugs her, asking her not to leave. Rose says that even if she might leave someday, she is not tired of the group yet, so she will stay a while longer. Returning to Sable, he tells Zero that he has been recovering all the memories of his life. Zero explains that it is probably because he no longer feels as empty as before. Sable then says that his mother once told him never to get close to a witch with the same eyes as his. Zero responds that she and her brother were the only ones in the family who had those eyes, revealing that she is his aunt. She then explains that many years ago, Sable's father tried to experiment on him, believing that by combining his blue-eyed mage genes with his wife, they could create a mage with infinite magic. Because of this, his mother had no choice but to run away. She also begins to describe what his father was like in general terms, saying that he was a brave and strong man who made serious mistakes, such as starting a war. All of this was done to create a world of witches, sacrificing the lives of many innocent people. In short, Sable's father became a complete villain, and after learning this, Sable confesses that he wants to become a good person, completely opposite to his father. He then says that he wants to train, so Zero asks him to let the magic flow between them. In a parallel scene, Holt and Rose arrive at the room where Tyran and Kudu are, along with the man who had been stung by bees earlier. At that moment, it is revealed that Tyran was responsible for all of this, and it seems that the group healed him, allowing him to recover his limbs. The man who is lying on the ground suddenly jumps toward Rose, but she easily stops him. A little later, the group gathers around the man who attacked Rose, now completely tied up. They mention that he was apparently sent by the church. Soon after, a girl named Harful appears and says that not everyone in the church is as bad as that man. Despite everything that happened, she brings him food and adds that he may have been sent as a test subject to see if he could defeat them. She has a kind heart and thinks that Tyran should be shown around the village, since if his duty now is to protect it, he should get to know it well. After that, they leave the place. Later on, the group talks about Ye, and he thinks they should torture the captured man. However, since he is just a boy, they decide to leave him in Chimpu's hands. At that moment, Chimpu appears and tells them that the man is not actually asleep as they think. Right after, the man realizes this and tries to attack Chimpu, but he is easily subdued. The boy becomes scared after realizing that everyone in the village is incredibly strong. After that, Chimpu tells Rose to darken the surroundings, and by using Luden she completely darkens the area. This is because Chimpu wears glasses since bright light bothers him. Chimpu then begins to interrogate the boy and warns him not to lie, since he has an ability that allows him to know the truth. After several questions, he concludes that the boy does not have much useful information. Finally, Rose returns everything to normal, goes back to her room, and thinks that she should continue investigating. A little later, Holt goes out for a walk when she suddenly hears some children laughing happily. She heads toward the sound and is surprised to see Tyran weaving together with the kids. Harful tells her that she is teaching Tyran how to weave, and that it is actually a fish trap. It turns out that he used to work in a trap-making workshop, so now he is teaching the school children. This shows that he is not as bad as they first thought. In another scene, Kudo arrives with the boy who attacked them, whose name is Cad. They then go to Lily, who has prepared a full feast for them. When Cad tastes her food, he is completely amazed. However, since Cad hates beasts and witches, they decide to teach him a lesson. They remove Lily's hood, and he is shocked to see that she is actually a mouse. Because of this, he begins to change his opinion about beasts. After a while, the group says goodbye, and Lily reminds him that the food was delicious. Later, Kudo takes Cad to his room and then leaves. The boy thinks everything is beautiful and suddenly starts crying since he has never been treated so kindly before. That night, Sable shows the others that he can now control his magic a bit better, thanks to Zero's training. After that, the others begin to practice as well. Suddenly, Sable asks Rose to lend him her staff because he wants to try an experiment that he cannot test on humans. He then casually tells her that he likes her very much, which makes her fall to the ground in embarrassment. Rose says that she cares deeply about her students, but Sable surprises her even more when he says that he does not mean it in that way, but that he wants to marry her, like a pair of lovebirds. These words make Holt very nervous, and she tells him that he should be less direct when it comes to love, since statements like that can be very overwhelming. The next morning, Cad has a dream where he is with a boy and is psychologically tortured so that he will hate witches and beasts. He suddenly wakes up when Holt enters the room and tells him that they should go fishing at the river. A little later, the group along with Tyran and the school children head out to fish. Meanwhile, Sable goes to Rose's room and she jumps in surprise since he had never woken her up before. Shortly after, the two go to the rooftop to drink tea, and Sable says that he wants to start his experiment as soon as possible. He then shows her a method he created to store magic, which he learned from a book written by his father. After that, Rose takes out her staff and pours a drop of Luden potion. The staff then absorbs the rest of the potion by itself and drinks it completely. Rose comments that Luden seems to like it very much, and that the small vial contained enough magic for 2 mages. Sable then says that he will need to change the ingredients to hold even more of his magic. In another scene, we are shown Tyran's past. Since childhood, he had an incredible talent for making traps, but due to abuse from his father, he ended up being recruited by malicious people and was eventually captured and recruited by witch hunters. Back in the present with Tyran, they have already arrived at the river, and we see that the children are having a great time. Harful and Tyran start talking, and after a while, she goes to join the kids. Soon after, Cad begins to feel very sick in his stomach, and suddenly a creature starts coming out of it. Tyran tries to attack, but his arm is instantly cut off, and we see a kind of demon that has taken over the boy's body. Tyran realizes that the boy must have brought with him a remnant of the calamity from before, along with a trap placed inside his own body. The group says they need to distract the creature so Holt can cast a spell that neutralizes beasts. Tyran charges at it, creating a distraction while taking hits from the creature. A few seconds later, Holt casts her spell, causing a massive block to rise from the ground. She thinks she has trapped the demon, but it quickly breaks free and escapes. The creature appears again in front of them, and Tyran rushes in once more to buy time for the others. He ends up badly injured, leaving Holt no choice but to use her most powerful spell. After casting it, she launches it at the creature, and it is knocked down. At the same time, Kudo casts a healing spell that completely restores Tyran's body. However, the group is shocked when the creature begins to split into many smaller ones. It tries to escape, but ends up stumbling. The group thinks it is the end for them, but suddenly Rose appears and tells her staff, Luden, that it is time to eat. Immediately, the staff devours all the small monsters in a single bite. The next day, the three of them are at the cemetery, mourning because they were unable to save Cad. They are suddenly interrupted when they see the Dragon King heading toward the village, so they quickly run to meet him. When they arrive, they greet him, but are left in complete shock when he orders them to return to the kingdom of Wenyas, as the village is about to become a battlefield. Shortly after, they go to Zero and question why they have to return, but they are told that these are orders from the kingdom, and if they refuse, they will be expelled from the academy. Sable says he does not care and plans to stay. He also points out that mages are not suited for close combat, so witches usually defend themselves using traps. He suggests that they should set up many traps. However, Zero responds that it is much harder to capture someone than to kill them. In response, Sable shows her the magic potion he created, which greatly surprises her. She tells him that if his plan works perfectly, they could practically graduate even if they are expelled. At that moment, Rose appears and says that they should take their final exam. After thinking about it, Zero tells them that she will inform the headmaster, which makes the group very happy. In another scene, Albus is very excited as she finds the idea of magical traps to be excellent and says that they must prepare for the upcoming war. A few hours later, Tyran and Chimpu are seen talking about what happened with the group. Chimpu praises him, saying that he proved to be kinder than he seemed. After a long conversation, Tyran says that he needs to go back to his master. Back with Sable, Holt tries the potion he created and is amazed as her magic is fully restored. At that moment, Sable takes the opportunity to reveal that his father is 13, which makes Kudo angry since Sable is extremely gifted without much effort. However, Sable tells him that this time he is truly working hard. In another scene, we move to the children's school where Tyran is. The kids prepared a meal for him as thanks for saving them. After a few hours, Tyran and Harfel are left alone, and he becomes very thoughtful. The girl asks if something is wrong, and as she touches his cheek, Tyran becomes a bit nervous. It seems he is starting to develop feelings for her, but since he was raised as an assassin, he feels very confused. Because of this, he decides to leave. Later, he meets Holt and tells her that he is afraid because he might end up killing them. Holt responds that this means he is starting to regain his humanity, and if his heart truly changes for the better, then living every day will become a painful reminder of everything he has done in the past. Before leaving, she tells him that if that happens, she will let him live so that he can suffer. After she leaves, Tyran imagines the children and Harfel covered in blood, showing that his true suffering is just beginning. A few days later, the group is seen building traps to neutralize their enemies once the war begins. They have chosen Tyran to help recreate them, since he is an expert in this field. At the same time, Zero is planning a strategy to neutralize everyone without causing injuries. Ye, while talking with Rose, is very worried because he does not know whether their enemies are strong or weak. Chimpu then explains that they are actually very weak, as they are peasants, homeless people, and outcasts, totaling around 10,000. However, if they kill them, they will be seen as the villains. Chimpu then points out that this is exactly what the enemy wants. A little later, the group leaves the place, while Rose and Chimpu stay behind talking. Rose takes one of the creatures that Luden had eaten and asks Chimpu if it is part of the calamities. He replies that it could have been a plague they tried to spread in the village, but that would be foolish, since no one spreads a plague without having the cure first. In another scene, Holden is talking with the captain of the witch squad, who tells him that they should take in all the people fleeing from the witch hunters, because if they treat them well, they might join their side. Holden then tells him to gather as many soldiers as possible right away. We then see that across the kingdom, the leaders of different important factions begin gathering soldiers while discussing what is being planned in Zero's village. Soon after, we move to the academy, where Albus is speaking with a man named Torres. He explains that during the Northern War, the creatures, after killing many people, planted seeds inside their bodies. Because of this, there may still be remnants of calamities inside certain people. He then shows her one of those seeds inside a small vial. This means that if he has one, anyone with bad intentions could have many more, and no one would know where or when they might plant them. At that moment, a beast man named Carlos interrupts and delivers a message from Ria. Albus appreciates his arrival and asks him to go to a certain place. She then rushes off, saying that she needs to inform Zero. After a few days, we see Sable's group gathered, discussing how perfect their plan needs to be, since many lives could be lost if they fail. Since most of the responsibility falls on Zero, Sable stands up and tells her that he will give her his magic. Knowing what is about to happen, she accepts. Sable then begins transferring a large amount of his magic to Zero, making her very nervous, as he does not stop. She eventually stops him and admits that she underestimated him, as she thought his magic would run out. She then tells him that one day he will become an incredibly powerful sorcerer. A few days later, the enemy army enters the forest near Zero's village. Suddenly, many rats appear, causing panic among the soldiers. As they move forward, they trigger traps that cut off many of their limbs. However, a magical rain suddenly falls from the sky, healing them. They then begin reading texts written on the trees, and suddenly the soldiers are set on fire and left completely naked. In short, these are the traps set by the group, successfully slowing them down and making them hesitate to continue. However, at that moment, a group of beast mercenaries appears and continues advancing. Meanwhile, Sable's group gathers to discuss their strategies. Zero mentions that many of the 10,000 soldiers have already fled. However, the beast squad continues moving forward. She also adds that one of them might be possessed by a demon, which allows them to use different types of magic without limits or spells. Chimpu adds that these are extremely powerful enemies and it would take many people working together to defeat them. At that moment, Ye and Chimpu realize that Lily is not with them, so they immediately stand up. Zero then says that the war has already begun. In another scene, we see that the demon has captured Lily. The strongest demon says that he will eat her once they return to the village. However, at that moment, several demons are completely cut down by Chimpu's threads. The demon holding Lily also loses the arm that was grabbing her. The monster says that it tried to regenerate but could not. Chimpu explains that he cut its arm using a scythe blessed by the church and reinforced by a witch. However, the demon cuts off the damaged part and regenerates its arm anyway. At the same time, we see that several of the fallen beasts begin to revive and merge their bodies, surrounding them. Ye and Chimpu prepare themselves for battle. Meanwhile, several beastmen arrive at the fortress where Sable and the others are. They fall into a trap set by Tyran, and one of them gets angry, calling Tyran a traitor and ordering an attack on the group. Tyran then lowers the fortress defenses and begins fighting. Soon after, Zero appears and orders the group to attack. Holt, Kudo, and Sable cast a spell that causes hundreds of magical arrows to rain down from the sky, forcing all the enemies to take cover. However, one of the beasts manages to slip through and reach Sable. Just as he is about to be attacked, Sable uses a new combat technique he learned and easily defeats the beast. Then, Holt casts a fire spell that hits all the enemies, but she slightly overuses her power, so Kudo steps in to heal the severely injured ones. Zero tells them that their part of the battle is over, but at that moment, Ye arrives along with the possessed demon, still fighting. He asks Zero for help, since no matter how much he cuts the demon, it keeps regenerating. Zero then tells the group that she will show them the true power of a witch. She begins to cast a spell from the Grimoire of Zero, a completely forbidden spell. Beneath the demon, multiple dark entities appear and devour the monster. After defeating the demon, Zero tells them that they must never stray from the right path. Soon after, the enemy army retreats, completely overwhelmed by Sable's group. A few hours later, Albus and Torres celebrate the kingdom's victory together with the nobles. However, in the middle of the ceremony, many calamity remnants suddenly begin to appear around them. Albus and the other guards cast a spell to try to eliminate the beasts, but this only causes them to rush toward the people. A noble named Amor tells the other nobles to gather around him, saying that they will be safe because of a talisman he possesses. He then starts claiming that the witches caused all of this and failed to protect their people. He also says that he knows how to repel the calamity insects, but that he was testing the kingdom of Wenyas, as well as Zero and the others. His attitude seems very suspicious, especially since he shows a sinister smile while speaking. However, Amor's confidence does not last long, as Albus points out that to create a repellent talisman, one must know the name of the enemy demon. She directly asks how a noble like him knows such information. This makes him extremely nervous, as he realizes that Albus has uncovered his plan. At that moment, his talisman suddenly stops working, and the small monsters rush toward him. But just then, Rose appears and uses Luden to devour all the creatures instantly. Rose then reveals that she already knew his plan to blame the witches and make them look like villains. She declares that she will use her authority as a bishop to eliminate the southern witch hunters. After that, she takes one of the calamity seeds from Ludin and tells him that she will allow him to keep his position as bishop. However, he must eat the seed so she can control him. She reminds him of his own teachings, that those who eat the seed will be blessed and forgiven, and now uses those same words against him. If he wants to live, he must eat it. In the end, she forces him to swallow the seed. In the following days, rumors spread across the kingdom that 10,000 soldiers failed to defeat Zero's village. People also begin to speak well of her, since she did not kill any of the soldiers. A few weeks later, Sable's group returns to the Magic Academy with Albus, who happily gives them their graduation certificates, praising their excellent work. The group asks if they will be assigned jobs after graduating, as they are interested in joining. Kudo says he wants to join the Witch Squad, while Sable wants to continue studying magic. However, Albus tells them that she has a better job for them. A few days later, Sable returns to Zero's village, and she gives him the book written by his father. She also reveals something in the book that she had not been able to decipher for years, leaving her amazed. Sable explains that the hidden code can only be solved if you know that 13 was the one who wrote it.